Hey guys, welcome to chapter 4, and this will be the second part of section 1 or section 2. I haven't really decided yet, but regardless, in this section we're going to be creating our models and database tables. So if you can recall, we've talked about MVC quite a bit, which is Model View Controller, and we created a home controller for our home page, and we also created a post controller, and in that controller we also created a couple post related views. So we have our controllers and views set for the posts. Now what we need to do is create the model which will interact with the database. So the first thing we need to do is open up our shell prompt. You can click on the git bash icon. That should have came with the Heroku tool belt, I believe. And when you open it, it puts you in your user directory, and that's not where you want to be. If you're on Windows, you want to be in your sites folder and then in your app folder. So let's change directory to the C drive sites folder, and then one more time we want to switch to my Ruby blog. And if you list the contents, it should look like this. So what we need to do here is I'm going to first create the categories model, and then we'll do the post model. So before we do that, I actually just want to check on the controller and views. So I'm going to go into sites, my Ruby blog, and just take a look at the app folder and the controllers. So the application controller comes with Rails, and then whatever controllers we add will extend upon that. So we did create a home controller and a post controller, which I'll open now just to refresh my mind. And we've created all the actions. Actually, this doesn't look right. So we get the index, the new, the create. This shouldn't be here, this DEF. So just, if you have that too, just delete that. So we get the edit, the update, the show, and destroy. And all we did was create a instance variable. Any variable with that @ sign in Ruby is a instance variable, and we just put this text in there, and then we went ahead and went in the view, and I think it was the post index view, and then we just echoed out or printed out those instance variables. So what we want to do now is we don't want to define the data in a variable like this. We want our instance variables to grab from the database and use that. So we need to create a model to do that. And we're going to have categories and posts. So I'm just going to create the categories first, and you can generate a model much like you do with a controller by doing Rails G, just G or generate, and then model, and then what you want to call your model. Now this is very important. Your model needs to be singular. Guys, I just recorded and ran it back, and there was no sound on the video, so I have to go back and just show you what commands I used. Okay, so I already ran it. I'm not going to run it again. I'm just going to show you what you should be doing. So we left off at Rails generate model, and the first model we want to create is the category model. So you want to do Rails G model, and then you want to do category. Okay, it's very important that you use singular category, because models are singular and controllers are plural. So you want to do Rails generate model category, and then you want to put the fields that we want in the categories table, and we're going to do just name, and that's a string. Okay, so that's what you want to do, and it will just create the migrate file, and it will create our model. So if I go to where I ran it, let me just find it real quick. I did it right here. Rails G model, category, name, string. And you might get this security warning. It's just something to do with the sessions. Just ignore that. And then you'll see down here it says invoke active record, and you should be seeing this. It created what's called a database migration file. What it is it just is the SQL or the query that we want to run to create the categories table in the database. It hasn't created it yet. We actually have to run the migration file for that to create. You'll also see it created it created a category file in our models directory, and it also invoked some tests, which we'll be looking into later. Alright, so after that, after you run and generate the model, you just want to run rake db migrate. Now when you run that, if we go down where I ran it right here, what it does is it just puts those queries, the SQL into action, and it actually creates the tables, the categories table on your local database, which is the Postgres database. And we can actually check that out by going to the pgadmin program. One second. Now we use this in previous chapters, and this is our local database. So I'm going to connect to mine. And if we go to databases, it should be the MyRubyBlog database. And we go down to schema, public, and then tables. If we click on tables, you'll see there's our categories table right here. This is what the migration file created. So if you go down, you can actually see the programming that was run to create it. It created the name. This is the name field that we created, as well as the timestamps that I talked about, and it also created a primary key of categories underscore p key. So this is what we would use to identify whatever category we're looking for, which we can also use this in our post table for our posts, because every post will have a category. So now let's go back and create our post model. I'm going to exit out of this extra command line, and we're going to do Rails G model, and this is going to be post. Remember, singular has to be post. And now what are we going to use? Let me go back to our Excel file from the last section, and our posts are going to have a string, a title, a body, a category ID, and an author ID. So let's create those. We're going to do that like this. Title is going to be a string. Body is going to be text. We'll say category ID is going to be integer, and author ID will also be an integer. I think that's it. That's all we need to do here. Let's run that. Alright, so it created another migration file, and again, you don't have to keep track of these migration files. Rake knows which ones to use, what the latest ones are, and what hasn't been run. So now we can run that. We'll just do rake db migrate. And it created our table. Let's go back to Postgres, whatever you want to call it, and click on tables, and it's not there. Notice primary key will implicit post B key. Oh, sorry, I just needed to reload. If you're using this pgadmin, just reload and you'll see the post table was created, and it has all our fields here. So our database is all set at the moment. Like I said, we're going to be using a program called ActiveAdmin that will be dealing with our users table, because in this particular application we're just going to have a blog poster or an admin login. We're not going to have other front-end logins, so it'll only be admins. So the last thing I want to do here is, where we're using Heroku to deploy, we need to run the rake migrate command for the Heroku site as well. So we want to do Heroku run rake and then db migrate. Whoops, sorry about that. Alright, so that should... These are just some deprecation warnings. Don't worry about that if you're getting those. And after you run that, we want to... let's just push everything to Heroku. So it matches our local site. So we want to do git add all, and then we want to do git commit am, and we'll just say Heroku update. You can write whatever you want here, it's just a comment. And then finally we need to do git push Heroku master, and that should push everything we have up to this point to the Heroku site. And we can visit our hosted app. Now you probably couldn't have used the name MyRubyBlog. Well, you couldn't, because it's all these subdomains are unique. So I would suggest using, well, you already did if you did this, but hopefully you use something like MyRubyBlog 2 or something like that. Alright, so this is my home page. So it looks like it's still uploading. I just want to reload it after everything's said and done, just to make sure it's up to date, just to make sure it's running right. So if we reload, looks good. Let's go to post. I forget exactly which views we have. Yeah, so if we go to post index, alright, so everything looks good from the remote site as well. So I think that's a good place to stop. In the next section, or the next chapter, I believe we're going to be doing some relational database stuff. So we want to relate the category, for instance, the category ID to the category ID in the post table. So we'll be doing that. We'll also be doing some CRUD, which is create, read, update, and delete. So we'll be able to do those things to our posts and categories. So I will see you in the next video.